Hi, welcome to another review by Jim. And this week we're looking at my 1985 Mazda Rx7. Most people are familiar with the Rx7 as the street racer with a veil-side body kit driven by Vin Diesel in the first Fast and Furious movie. And that is an iconic Japanese sports car in the same league as the Acura NSX and Nissan Skyline. But before that third generation Rx7, there was this one, the first generation, with roots from the 1970s. Less sophisticated, crudely cobbled from the parts bins of Mazda's other car models, yet somehow greater than the sum of its parts and richly deserving to be called a sports car. If Mazda had been a larger car company, the Rx7 might have evolved into a supercar to join the current supercars like the LFA, GTR, and new NSX. Mazda certainly has the motorsports pedigree to justify a supercar sticker price. However, Mazda is a very small car company in a world of giants. In the late 1950s, Mazda was in danger of being merged with Toyota and Nissan, as Japan wanted to reduce the number of car makers to only 3 large ones. Mazda was successful in staying independent because they had decided to research and develop Felix Wankel's rotary engine. They were so successful that they nearly avoided having to pay a lifetime of licensing fees for Wankel's technology to NSU, by being the first to introduce a rotary-powered car for sale. But NSU introduced the Spider in 1964, only a few months before Mazda unveiled their significantly more sophisticated and mechanically more durable Mazda Cosmo Sport Coupe. NSU never figured out how to make their rotor apex seals last, and the company went bankrupt from all the warranty claims they honored for their cars, and became a part of Audi. The same fate almost befell Mazda in the 1970s, but for different reasons. They had a successful lineup of cars, coupes, sedans, and even a pickup truck, until the 1973 OPEC oil embargo quadrupled gas prices. Suddenly, there were no customers for Mazda's thirsty rotary engine cars. Fortunately, Mazda is no stranger to adversity. After all, they are from Hiroshima. Because the US had become accustomed to bargain basement prices for oil, they were ill-prepared to manufacture small, fuel-efficient cars. The second half of the 1970s was the low point for cars in North America. Boring, soulless, slow, and frankly ridiculous. Yet somehow Mazda read the market conditions correctly. They reasoned that people were hungry for an exciting and beautifully bodied sports car, and unlike the family car, one could forgive a sports car for being a little thirsty on gas. The Rx7 debuted to the public in 1978 to critical acclaim. The soul of any Rx7 is the rotary engine. Instantly you see it's tiny and not that attractive. Each rotor displaces 600 cc's, so this 12A engine with 2 rotors has a total displacement of only 1.2 liters. And it's simple. There are no valves, so no valve covers. No connecting rods either. The geared crankshaft is driven directly through the center of each rotor. No camshafts and no timing belts, and none to break. Fewer engine parts means simpler fabrication and less things to go wrong with time. The small engine footprint allowed Mazda to package it behind the front axle, low, for a front mid-engine weight distribution and key to the Rx7's fine handling. Since the rotor engine spins in one continuous direction with no movement reversals found in a reciprocating piston engine, it has extremely smooth power delivery. The power of a single rotor is delivered over 270 degrees of crankshaft rotation versus only 90 degrees in a single piston engine. It has the ability to rev well over 10,000 RPM, but in road-going form, power peaks at 7,000 to 8,000 RPM. This dashboard was available only in North America for 1984 and 85, and it's aged extremely well. Mazda sold 80% of its Rx7s in North America, but they also made more money per unit car in other markets because the car was priced higher there. It's strictly a 2-seat coupe, but because of tax laws in Japan, a tiny rear seat was standard. One of the telling features that shows this car is from another era is its weight. Incredibly, under 1,100 kilos, and that's without a trace of fiberglass. The all-steel body is exceptionally torsionally rigid, critical for the Rx7's fine handling. But Mazda did have to find ways to save money because they wanted to price the car at a point to entice buyers who were perhaps wary of its unknown power plant. The car does feature wonderful things like a live rear axle, recirculating ball steering, tiny brakes on tiny 13-inch rims, even the rear glass hatch is just a rectangular piece of glass, cleverly disguised by these fixed panes on the flying buttresses. The original design was for an expensive three-sided wraparound piece of glass, which you do find in the second and third generation RX-7s. But these louvers are an oh-so perfect period-correct accessory from an era that started with the Lamborghini Miura and the Maserati Ghibli. Another period anachronism is the powered antenna, but you have to wait for it. This OEM spoiler is a salute to Mazda's victories in the IMSA GTU category from 1979-85. When Mazda went racing with RX-7s, they were street models, stripped and modified for racing, not dedicated race builds. So unlike a NASCAR, which looks like a normal car but shares absolutely nothing underneath it with a normal car, all racing Mazdas were essentially street-going Mazdas. So the Mazdas also competed at Le Mans. They finished third overall in the 1983 Daytona 24 Hours. They competed in Group B rallying, in Bathurst, in the British Touring Championship, and most importantly in 1981, they won outright the 24 Hours of Spa, competing against 5.7-liter V8 Camaros and 5 Series BMWs. Let's go to the front. Mazda did splurge for pop-up headlights. And they do change the character of the front of the car. But they also reduced the coefficient of drag to 0.35, outstanding for the time. And finally, something that's purely bling, it's actually a Mazda factory accessory. And I keep it on the car because it's just cannot be found anymore. It's that rare. And of course, it's a tribute to the Porsche 911 Targa. Let's go for a drive. So the car only came with 101 horsepower stock, which seems ridiculous by today's standards. But the car has been modified with a period-correct CarTech draw-through turbo boosting 5 psi and a catalytic converter deletion. So horsepower at the flywheel should be about 150. Race versions of this engine can produce upwards of 250 horsepower by simply enlarging the intake and exhaust ports, which is analogous to changing the camshaft profile in a piston engine. The suspension has also been modified, or refreshened I should say, with urethane bushings, fully adjustable shocks, altered spring rate coils to reduce ride height, and larger front and rear anti-sway bars. That's the famous Mazda over-rev buzzer. A little annoying. It's rather loud. I upgraded to 15-inch rims about 20 years ago because even back then it was hard to find performance tires in 13-inch sizes. So now I run 50 series profile tires, which of course improve handling. But the other advantage to 15-inch rims is that I can buy an entire set of tires for the price of one 20-inch OEM Pirelli for my daily driver. So the recirculating ball steering is a little slow, and there's definitely a tangible dead spot on center. But it works. It doesn't compromise the tossability of the RX-7. This car simply goes wherever you point it with little fuss or complaint. I recall a trip with my son a few years back to Kentucky, and I was passing all traffic when we were descending the Appalachian Mountains. The reason for that is because I didn't have to touch the brake pedal once on those steep, sweeping descents. The RX-7 gives you that inspired road-holding feeling and confidence. Take this nice, tight right-hand exit. You just feel the rear wheel slipping just a little bit there. Engine likes to be revved hard periodically to prevent carbon deposits from forming on its long, thin combustion chamber. The engine actually injects oil into the air-fuel charge in the carburetor so that lubrication can reach the apex seals. So the engine is actually designed to burn oil, and that's one of the reasons why Mazda is no longer making any rotary engine cars, because it's simply not possible for the engine to pass ever stringent vehicle emissions regulations. There are also no water passages in the rotors, so oil has to be injected through the eccentric shaft and sprayed onto the rotors to cool them down. Which is a good reason why you should run synthetic oil in your rotary instead of mineral-based oil, because that will reduce overall oil operating temperatures. The car comes with one oil cooler, and I actually installed a second one just to give it more capacity for cooling. And it's also a good idea when you refuel to add oil to the gas tank directly to ensure that you got enough lubrication of the apex seals and not rely on the engine's oil injection system, which by now is 35 to 40 years old. sensory delight. It brings the 60s and 70s flooding back. It's very visceral and raw. The sounds, the smells, all these things people are insulated against when they drive their encapsulated modern cars today. So the car is more of a GT than a sports car because it doesn't have a lot of low-end grunt. It's really a car designed to travel at high speed for hundreds of miles in really exceptional comfort, regardless of how undulating or twisty the road might be. In 2011, Car and Driver magazine invited its past and present editors to submit anecdotes about the 10 cars that surprised them the most. Tony Asenza chose the 1985 RX-7 GSL SE, and he wrote, "On a cool night when the world oppresses the spirit, this RX-7 revives the soul."